I'm going to be inviting our panelists to the table. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Kelechukwu Okezie, Executive Director, Neighborhood Environment Watch New Foundation. And then also we have Mrs. Abiodun Bayeu from Global Rights. And then joining us as well is going to be Mr. Adamu Kotorkoshi, Executive Director, Center for Community Excellence, Sensex. Online with us is going to be Mr. Augustine Abo. He's not here physically, but he's joining us online. So we'll be hearing from him virtually. A round of applause for him as well, even though he's not in the room. And then finally, for gender inclusion, last but not the least, Mrs. Mary Okwe from CDRT Consult. Thank you. Right, so very quickly, and not too quickly, our session is going to be focusing on basically what we like to call the resource costs. Instead of resource-rich communities to have better welfare or to have improved prosperity because resources are present in their communities, you have a situation whereby those resources actually undermine prosperity and welfare in those communities. And we have a good case study being the Niger Delta, for instance. And now in the mineral sector, solid mineral sector especially, the same thing is emerging as we have in, for example, Zamfara State and as well as Niger State. These are resource-rich communities that are being plagued by conflicts, ethnic profiling, hate speech, leading to mass atrocities, and extrajudicial killings. So today, I think our major objective is going to be identifying what the major causes of these atrocities and conflicts are in these communities. Who are the parties responsible? What are the dynamics between these and funding terrorism? And as well, how marginalized people, how their risks and vulnerability is heightened as well. And then hopefully way forward, moving from there. So I'm going to be dialing questions to our panelists. Unfortunately, we have only 5 minutes for every questions. And then hopefully after that, we go into the audience, get perspectives from the audience, and then hopefully you'll have a very productive discourse. So let me start from my right, from Dr. Kelechi, very quickly. Just the basics, really. Let's begin by highlighting the most common security challenges, especially in these communities, in resource-rich communities. What are the most common security challenges? Just to give a very grounding context to the topic.
Thank you very much for having me here, and to Global Right for putting up this summit. I come from one of the resource-rich communities in Ebonyi State that is noted for lead, zinc, limestone, granites, and other resources, including agricultural resources. So it's also an area that is prone to high level of insecurity. And that is just the same tale of other resource-rich communities in Nigeria. And the statistics and data are there. What are those security challenges they face? Of course, when the head of human rights was making his earlier contribution, he highlighted some of those things. And he put them in broader perspectives. Economic insecurity, social insecurity, including food insecurity. But we all know that resource-rich communities in Nigeria are epicenters of terror attacks. They witness lots of terrorist attacks due to the resources that are available in their land. And those things, to me, are intentional because they are meant to dispossess these communities of their resources so that foreign elements could begin to exploit this. So, and you have a lot of terrorist attacks across many host communities in Nigeria. In Benue State, you have a Gatu community. In Niger, in Zamfara, just name it, northeast, northwest, and even south, and southeast. These are resource-rich communities, and these are centers of terrorist attacks. So one major security challenge is that these areas are targeted. And these terror attacks or these conflicts are externally driven. Because before the discovery of these resources, those communities were living peacefully. But immediately these resources were discovered, they become centers of conflict. And recently, if I may even cite an example, there's an ongoing war in one of the states, in Ebonyi State. This is a community that have lived peacefully before. But immediately, mineral resources were discovered. I'm talking of the Eza and the Fium communities, conflict that have taken loss of life in Ebonyi State. It's just as a result of new mineral resources that were discovered. So we can see that mineral resource endowed communities suffer terror attacks. They are intentionally disposed so that the exploiters continue to exploit them. We also, when these things happen, we have food insecurity because the lands are taken away from them. They can't go to their farms anymore. Are you trying to force me?
Thank you very much. I'll be cutting you short in the interest of time. But so, thank you very much, Dr. Kelechi, for that succinct explanation. And just reinforcing what he says, resource-rich communities usually are characterized by, you find new players emerging, that's scrambling for selling mineral resources, creating new value chains, trying to cut off people that are actually doing the mining, people that are most vulnerable, just to make sure these resources only benefit a few. So these are some of the drivers. And then you have security challenges, you have social issues being magnified, and so on and so forth. I'll be going to our next speakers. So having these issues in these communities, just like our doctor said, what do you think, or who do you think are the major drivers of these conflicts in these communities, and how exactly do they drive it?
Okay, thank you very much. There are different actors in the conflict or the insecurity in these research communities. In some locations, you may say bandits cause the death of people. Those are the ones that die by the gun. In some other locations, they may not be dying by the gun. They may be dying by the resource itself. And in that case, you may want to hold the environment itself responsible for having the resource. However, there are duty bearers who administer these resources. A lot of times, the communities where you have the resources being the cause of death, you find out that the ones who are characterized with artisanal mining have more of these challenges. It's almost like a situation where you are not sure who is administering that resource. However, you see people. there might not be a company officially located in such a place, but the resource is being mined, is being explored. It means that somebody is aware that somebody is extracting that resource. And so that person has a duty to take responsibility for that, the side effect of the exploration. If they were given licenses, it means they were given license by government. If they were not given license, whether they be local or foreign, they were allowed into the country or into that space by some authorities. I heard one of the speakers in the last session says, you do need to have an ID card to be identified as a Nigerian. So it means that such people too have ID cards to be permitted to enter. And so, in the process of exploring the resource, if they are not holding the gun, they are exposing the community to death. And then, because the exploration itself is not very mechanical, the environment itself begins to kill the people. You have a lot of people who have died from the mines itself. You hear that a mine has collapsed on people. I mean, for example, we had experience where we were in the community and people were screaming. And some people had just gone down in the hole. You know, in that case, it's a big conflict for them. I see it like dying, yet silent. Because even when you ask questions, who is responsible for this mine site? The community itself do not want to tell you. Why do they not want to tell you? They are aware that they are dying. In a day, they can lose as many as 5 young men. But they do not want to disclose because this is also the source of their income. And at that point, I see them as vulnerable and marginalized. It's only like taking advantage of the people because this is the only way they can survive because no other form of survival is available to them. But yet they are aware they are going to die. And at that point, they begin to rely on fate and say that death has occurred because God deemed that they may die today. That doesn't make sense.
Thank you very much for that succinct view. Reinforcing what she said, this just highlights the corruption in that value chain, especially for resource-rich communities whereby there's a lot of absence of transparency. You don't know who has been awarded what license. You don't know who is mining what. It becomes unclear to trace who exactly is mining these resources. And then when it becomes difficult to do that, accountability also becomes difficult. So thank you very much for that. To Mrs. Abiodun, I'll come to him online. Okay, to Mrs. Abiodun, so talking about the conflicts it caused, how these affect them. We know how these affect children and women as well, typically them being in the front line of these risks and vulnerabilities. Can you please help us contextualize how exactly these affect them differently from how it affects other people in the community?
Okay. Do you mind if I just piggyback first and talk about who the actors are? Sure. She's spoken about two sets of actors. One, those who come into the communities to mine, and second, the environment itself, which then becomes toxic, and we're not treating the environment as an actor. The environment, and I'd like to introduce a third set of people, and I'm sure that Augustine, who's online, would also speak about them, are that communities, resource-rich communities, are increasingly being taken over by terrorist bandits as well. So they're not your regular artisanal miners, and we know that itinerant artisanal miners all over West Africa that go from community to communities. But these ones are targeted to wing the minerals in a community, to take over entire communities, and that's a trend that is going on across the country, so that they can mine the resources and use them to further fund terrorist activities. It's going on in Kaduna State. It's gone on for decades in Plateau State without it being actively called out. It's gone on in Taraba State for quite a while, especially with the sapphires. It's going on in Zamfara State, and he will speak more about this. And I'm so glad we've been partners working together now for about 13, 14 years with what's going on in Zamfara State, and he'll talk more about that. But then I'd like to piggyback on what she said about Also viewing the toxicity of the environment as an indicator of how it affects women and children differently. I met Adam 14 years ago in Zamfara State when the outbreak of lead poisoning had occurred, gold mining related lead poisoning. And at that time, we lost over 700 children to gold mining related lead poisoning. It's very difficult to say that you went into communities, you held children in your hands, and you're almost certain that when I go back to that community, I will not find them. Now, when it first started to happen, fathers took the children to the clinic where, they tried to describe the symptoms. They were described as though they had cholera. The clinics were treating cholera. The children began to die. And that's quite common across Nigeria, that you have those occasional pandemics of cholera that takes out a large chunk of children. I watched a repetition when I started to work with the community I spoke about in Shakira in Niger State, where when I went into the community chief, of course a man, said, a bad wind blew and our children died. The goats died, the cows died. It was a bad wind. But when women describe what occurred, both in Zamfara and in Niger State, they describe something entirely different. The women were also trying to earn a living by grinding the nuggets to get grinding the initial nuggets to get the gold from them, and they would do them in the homestead. And that mining affects women quite differently from the way in which it affects men, because they end up doing more work, taking care of the family when the men are gone for a long time, but yet at the same time trying to contribute to the mining work. In Mboyin State, we met several women who earned less than 200 naira a day, carrying huge basins of rocks, going up a very high hill. And if we find the videos later, we can show them to you. And you find people getting hernia, even women, in those circumstances. That malnutrition and the need for water affects women very, very differently, because they're the ones that are basically charged with providing water for their families. Mining pollutes water irredeemably, and that affects women. It affects children. Children are pulled out of school to help in mining activities. It affects education. We're the country with the most out-of-school children in the world, with 20 million, the population of some countries. Children out of school. So yes, it does affect differently. I've spoken about how it impacts the health of men. It's caused a lot of miscarriage and infertility in women in a number of places where toxins and oxidity had occurred in the community. It deepens their poverty beyond the men, who are more mobile than they are. And so yes, the impacts are quite different.
Thank you very much. That was very succinct. And I think this, the disproportionate nature of the impact is also something that gets easily left out in the conversations, with a lot of people assuming that it affects everybody equally and in the same proportion. So that's a very key perspective to hold on to. But then this highlights a very big gap, because as a country, I'm sure we have regulations in place and policies that are supposed to plug these gaps. And I'd like to invite Mr. Augustine to probably highlight just maybe a few of them. What are the gaping gaps that exist currently in our policy or in our policy frameworks that enable, this context that we now have in our hand?
All right, thank you. Good morning, everyone from Boston. Thank you so much, Global Rights, for the invitation. I would like to start by emphasizing the fact that the country itself had long overdue, they've spent so much energy and time in concentrating on oil resources. So we could say over the decades, that we have almost a total absence of governance in terms of mineral resources or mineral governance. So while we could have some kind of policies, in the papers, there is a very profound absence of actual governance of resources. And I think that's really one of the very key things that has given room for actors to have given themselves the legitimacy of mining mineral resources, and by extension, creating avenues for crime and violence. Let me retrace a bit to the last speakers or the last panel. They talked about a lot of shifts from agriculture. Farmers don't go to the farm again. But there is also a second trend, right? That farmers now move from farming into mining. So if you go to a lot of communities in the Northwest, you go to North, North Central, and even Southwest and South, almost all over the country, there is a trend where people go into illegal or artisanal mining as an alternative to farming, because the farmlands, as was rightly said, are not safe. So you could say that there is an extensive network of actors who, I may say, it's the foundation of terrorism franchise, that I can call it that way, where there is an extensive network and an extensive market that has given an opportunity for farmers or for miners, illicit miners, to generate funds. And like Abby had said earlier on, this has created an opportunity for a lot of funding for terrorism, right? We have seen from evidence that quite a number of mining sites are controlled by terrorist networks or bandits, right? And we have also seen the fact that bandits, just like they've been doing to farmers, right? People pay what they call protection levy, access levies, right? And because farming takes a longer time for people to generate resources, the people go into mining. And the other question is that there is an extensive network of international criminal networks, for instance. And we've seen a couple of instances in the arrest of especially Chinese miners, illegal miners in Nigeria. There is a trend, and there should be a question that is being asked. How come Nigerian farmers can't go into the forest to farm? The forests are becoming too dangerous for our farmers, but mining sites are relatively safe for miners. This points us to a clear evidence that there are some sort of network of criminal arrangements being made for protection, and also by extension, funding of insecurity, especially within the Northwest, the North Central region of the country. So I would say that the absence of governance, right? And not just the absence of governance, even where there are possible policies and state actors, there is a huge impact, or the huge evidence of complexity, of complacence, right? And also corruption among state actors. Within this arrangement, you could see that for areas where there is government presence, there is also some acts of sabotage or act of collusion that leads to funding of this of violence, right? And in areas where there is lack of governance, totally, there is an extensive control of the environment and the resources by these criminal networks, and they have profoundly, generated resources which have sustained their operations over time. So I would say precisely that the governance challenge we have in mineral resources, right, comes from two layers. One, the absence of governance in most of the mining environments, which has given bandits, terrorists opportunity to take control of those places, mine by themselves, and also collect charges from people who mine. And also in areas where government have limited access to, there is a high level of corruption, which has also led to, compromise, which has also led to illicit mining that has really generated a lot of problem for the country, and especially in terms of mining and as a source of funding insecurity in the country. So,
Thank you very much.
oh,
Sorry, I have to cut you short.
oh, thank you.
Thank you very much for those wonderful insights. And just to be in consistency with what he said, coincidentally or maybe by design, the regions that are most rich in resource minerals are also the most poorly governed regions around the world, both traditional minerals as well as the critical minerals that are required for just energy transition. So coming down to Mr. Adamu, can you just paint a picture for us, coming from, being closer to the community as well, how this corruption, this poor level of governance, this high level of conflict, how does it directly lead to terror funding in these areas?
Okay, thank you so much. I think there is no against in the fact that there is linkage between mineral resources and the insecurity, more especially in the northwest region of Nigeria, where I came from. Let me set an example. Prior to the identification of gold in Zamfara State was termed to be the most safest state in the country. But unfortunately, when the gold was discovered, that is when we start having some certain issues. Basically, in almost all the 14 local governments in Zamfara State, there is abundance of one mineral resources or the other. And initially, the gold mining started with the artisanal mining because it was the community members that discovered the deposit of this gold. But later, big people from all over the country have been trooping to Abuja, and they acquired different kind of mining license, where the first issue or the first problem comes is the federal government allocated people land to this big and mighty in the country. Therefore, the first tension has to do with the issue of compensation, and the second one has to do with the issue of social corporate responsibility. Therefore, like I rightly said, since 2010, we have been advocating for a better life for these communities. If you go to Zamfara State, the communities have been talking about, there is nothing to show on the ground. No electricity, no water, no schools, and their environment has been degraded beyond repairs. Most of the able men, that the major source of their livelihood, more especially in the northwest region of Nigeria, 95% of the population are into farming, but now they cannot access their farm. Therefore, in a situation whereby there is no food, there is high rate of employment, definitely a lot of people are going to be involved into the issue of criminology. Secondly, when this situation escalated, we thought that it's just an ordinary issue of minerals governance, like applicable in most of the African countries. But later we came to understand that there is some people that are benefiting either politically, economically, or indirectly, what I can simply term as complete either merchant or entrepreneurs. Yes, in Zamfara State, in most of the communities where we have been advocating for social corporate responsibility, for infrastructure, these people are possibly displaced. These communities are no longer in existence. Therefore, the people that are doing this mining, they have a free land to operate, to get what they want without paying any royalty, and at the same time, there is no security process and there is no any government agency that has the capacity to go and monitor what is happening in that communities. When you look at the security, there's different research and publications by both national and international medias, how the bandits collaborate with other community members and other elements in the country to involve themselves into these mining activities. Therefore, the first question that you will ask to yourself, these people or these armed bandits, how do they know a local man living in the village? How will he know that there is a mineral resources in a particular place? Definitely there is somebody with a technical know-how. We're talking about initially it was cattle rustling. They come to abduction, but later they came to understand that this mining of this gold will give them more resources. Therefore, like in the southern part of Maradun, in Zamfara state, we have a bandit leader called, okay, I will mention the name. Later, he decided to abandon all this. In different fora and different audios circulating, he came to understand that he has been wasting his time for the past years abducting people and rustling cattle. But this is the simple way where he can earn millions in a manner. Therefore, all these resources tap from this region. Who is benefiting from it? The people from the community are not benefiting. And why do you think that despite all the effort from the government and other security agencies, this problem of insecurity failed to be addressed in this state? Let me start an example. We're talking about the northwest region of Nigeria, let's say in particular, where I came from. We have this problem in Kaduna, we have in Zamfara, we have in Katsina and Sokoto. But Jigawa and the Kano state are equally in the northwest region of Nigeria. Why are they not having this issue of armed banditry? Because they don't have mineral resources. Another issue, our zone share a forest border with Niger Republic, Benin Republic, and other states in the northwest region of Nigeria. Therefore, there is proliferation of light and the small arms. There is a lot of people are involved, including women, as armorers, at the same time in the armed deal. Therefore, it is another source of livelihood. Like in Zamfara state, hardly we have an abduction. I can remember in 2019, there was a commission of inquiry instituted under the former IG of police who incidentally came from Zamfara state, and he is currently the state chairman of the security task force in the state, but nothing changed. Why? Because the findings from the community was so touching. Traditional leaders were indicted as sponsoring and funding terrorism. Political elite, religious leaders, and even security agencies are fingered. But as I speak to you today, nobody was arrested, nobody was taken to the court. Therefore, how do you expect sanity in a situation whereby people that are maiming, killing, raping, and terrorizing communities are left to be roaming about in the street where there is no justice?
Thank you very much, Mr. Adamum. And at the risk of blaming these communities, I understand that government and security agencies have the larger burden of protecting these communities because they are a jurisdiction under government. But then being closer to the community, I think it's also best to give you this, that you answer this question. So we have a bottom-up perspective, right? We have an internal perspective, closer to the problems, also probably best close to the solutions. What role, if there is any at all, and you can shape this narrative as well, is it correct to allocate any roles or responsibility to these victims? Let's just call them their names. Well, what roles do you think they can do to, if they have any, that is?
Well, I think if we are going to put a blame, it has to be with the system, because the communities and the members of the communities are victims of circumstances, because they are Nigerians that the system failed to give them all the necessary protection. Had it been the system provide all the necessary avenues for them to have all the infrastructures, to have the able education, at the same time to be benefiting from these mineral resources from their community, definitely it will minimize the situation. Let me set an example. In a community, maybe where, let's say, where I come from, We have a land which is a family land, but the government will just overnight allocated that portion to an individual without our consent. At the same time, he will come to our community at the same time to be allocating some portions to the individual that are the indigenous of that community to be doing artisanal mining. In most cases, these people, they are using local tools. And at the same time, the gold buyers, they are exploiting these people. They will give them some advance of money even before they exploit or they got the gold mine. Therefore, in some cases, when even they got the gold mining, they are not benefiting because they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the technical know-how, they don't even know about the market price, the recent market price of this gold. Therefore, in a situation whereby your water system has been destroyed, your farmland has been destroyed, your children are dying because of these illnesses, gold mine, lead poisoning, and what have you. No employment, no education, no hospital, and there is no any infrastructure in a place or in a community or in a region that is blessed with abundant resources. Therefore, what do you expect? That is one of the major factors. Poverty and unemployment is pushing the community members to liaise or to work together with the armed bandit and this kind of people in order to survive. That is why there is easy recruitment. Most of the children are dropping from the school. Like in Zamfara State, about 56 boarding schools now are closed. In most of the communities, the community members are feeling more secured to have a dialogue or discussion with the armed bandit. In most of the communities, over 100 communities in Zamfara State alone, the community members pay allegiance to the leaders of armed bandit because they feel they will be more protected by these terrorists rather than government conventional forces. Therefore, in most of the communities where you are talking about security, you have been hearing from a newspaper, thousands and thousands of military or police have been deployed to these zones, but they are only situated at the local government headquarters, but there are some places. Let me take an example. In Zurmi local government of Zamfara State alone, where they have 10 political wards, about 8 of these political wards are under control of this armed bandit, and they are moving freely, and they are the law and the order. They even decided cases among the community members. Therefore, how can you blame community members? How can you blame an individual that has been abandoned by the government he brought into the power? How could you describe a situation in Zamfara State and the other part of Katsina where we have a government within a government? People are paying taxes to the government at the same time they are paying levy to the armed bandit as a protection. Why people cannot access their farm? They have to pay levy in order to access their farm. Last month alone in Kauranamu, the local government alone in Zamfara State, within 1 month in the month of June, about 150 women are abducted. We find ourselves in another form of modern slavery. This armed bandit, 85% of them in Zamfara and Katsina, they are indigenous. They are born and brought up in this community. Their camps are known by the military and the government agencies. But they will come to the town and the villages. They will abduct people and take them to their farm during farming season. They will force them to work in their farm, forced labor, slavery. At the same time, after the harvest, they will release them. We are talking in a country where we have a constitution. We have a constituted authority. Therefore, people are helpless and they have nothing to do rather than to succumb in order to survive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adam. So it's very important to allow victims to shape their narratives, right? So we get the right picture of things. And I mean, these are problems that are very sad to hear. So, Doctor, very quickly, what do you think are the immediate or emergency policy reforms that can begin to tackle this? We have a Mining Act. I believe it's very old, 2007 Mining Act. It's there, but then what do you think the government can do urgently to tackle the reforms that can be made to tackle issues like this?
Thank you very much. First, we start with the Nigerian Constitution that allocates all the resources to the federal government. That creates a lot of disconnect between the mining host communities and the government. And they feel indifferent because they will be there and somebody comes with mining lease or mineral titles and say, have been given this license to operate. The community weren't consulted. And the community, the host community, it becomes helpless. Because the state, the federal government, now has allocated the resources to themselves. And so the people feel helpless. So if you are to address this, we need to look at the Nigerian Constitution and have to amend it and empower the host communities to become co-owners of the resources in their land. That will contribute to addressing these issues of insecurity. They now become responsible because they know that what is happening in their enclave will also benefit them. If you visit most of these host communities, on daily basis, you see tons and tons of vehicles leaving these communities with these mineral resources. Recently, last week, I was in one of the mining host communities in Ebonyi State to carry out a community-based research. No road. In fact, no health facility, no educational facility. But I was counting on daily basis, not less than 100 lorry loads of minerals are being taken out of that community. Yet they don't have any presence of the government. So it becomes a challenge because these people will settle and pay their royalties and also settle the state. But the host community, nobody thinks about them. So we need to look at that constitution. Another thing is, even the Land Use Act is also defective. We need to address that. The land belongs to the people. Now you give the land to the state government. The land in which mineral resources are located, you as an individual, you as a community, you don't have any control. So the 13% derivation goes to the state, not goes to the mining host community. And that is why you have this high level of poverty. And that is also why you have this level of insecurity. Because people must innovate in order to sustain their living. So we really need to look at that Land Use Act and understand that is defective. Of course, you look at the Nigerian Mineral Mining Act, all you can get there is Community Development Agreement, which is more of a beggarly position. And that is why the Federation of Mining Host Community, through the review that is ongoing, is soliciting that there should be that profit beneficiation, profit sharing. And that is what will help to address these levels of insecurity. The host communities must share from the profit that is coming. Utilize it in the development of their communities. So these are many others, even the Labor Act that disenfranchises women. These are some of the policies that we really need to look at. And of course, educate the host communities on some of their rights. This will help ensuring that things are done right.
Thank you very much, Doctor. That's very comprehensive. The Constitution, the Land Use Act, and the Mining Act itself, a lot of collaborative inputs need to be made into addressing that. So over to Madam. We have had what the policy reforms that might be necessary from government. What role do you think civil society organizations and community-based organizations have to play, in managing and preventing some of these risks?
I think that people at local level can play roles. However, their role is subject to what legal rights they have to play these roles. If you look at the Mining Act and the Land Use Act, currently, the way that the Mining Act is structured, it doesn't give any rights to local people to start with. So if land has been given out for mining, for example, the state or the federal government is the one who the license owner is more answerable to than the state. Even the state is handicapped in what they should do. it doesn't allow them much right to interfere before it even trickles down to the local level. The local level CBOs are challenged in the form that they are not even aware that visitors are coming to their location to come and carry out any mining. So you see some Chinese people enter your community. You know that they have been given the right to enter. You don't have the document that allows them to enter. You don't know the terms of reference in that document. If you go to say anything to them, you are a troublemaker. In any case, you don't even have a case. And you don't know how to direct your case. Because you don't know what rights they've been given. You don't know the extent to which they've been given that right. Perhaps they've been allowed to mine maybe a certain location. But once they enter, there's a limit to what you can control. Anywhere that they identify more resources, they probably will go forward. And so that in itself limits the contribution that CBOs can make. The highest they can do is to organize the community to question people when they come. Maybe not in an aggressive manner, maybe not in a very affirmative manner, you know, but at least to maybe find out who is involved before advocacies can step forward to state levels to intervene. However, there are risks. In Zamfara, for example, a community leader who is responsible for his people's safety, who feels that he has the duty to protect his people, when he becomes outspoken, then he becomes identified, he becomes tagged, you know, by the bandits, and even some members of the community who think that he is being too forward and he is probably going to prevent them from benefiting from mining.
Thank you very much. That's just absolutely true. Because whatever the CSOs and the CBOs can do has to be within the confines of the law as well. And then the law has to be very enabling of them. And then to Augustine, if he's still with us. Is Augustine
Yeah, I'm
still
here.
with us?
I'm here.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much. So there is also finger pointing. I mean, the civic society has the state and non-state actors being government, CSO, and the media. So how does the media, if they mitigate it, how do they mitigate it? And if they make it worse, how do they make it worse? How do they make conflict in these regions worse? Do they sensationalize it, or are they actually bringing any kind of mitigation or management to what is going on in these resource-rich communities? What do you think about the role of the media?
Thank you. Before I go to the role of the media, I just want to emphasize what the previous speaker just said. I strongly believe in a multi-level governance of, for us to have a way forward, we must ensure a multi-level governance from the federal to the states to the local and community level, as well as civil society. It's very important that at every stage of licensing or every stage of giving permission to people to go into mining, whatever is approved at the federal level must also be seen by the state and the local government and the communities. It will help a long way to know exactly the extent at which miners go about their activities. Because as it is now in the country, especially the foreign miners, they are running riots in our mining sites across the country, and it's very bad. And secondly, I will say that the media has a very important role to play, but there is also the dynamics about the country we are. Most times, whenever there are reports about illicit mining, or there are reports about some level of corruption and the absence of governance in mining sites, we over politicize, the issues. So I believe that while the media is very important in bringing to light these illicit activities and their impact, multidimensional impact on the national security, we should also begin to admonish the government agencies to trust the media. The media should be the first line of open source intelligence for the country. But most often, it looks like the government do not trust the media, or they always label them as being used by opposition. This kind of labeling, and waving away public intelligence, open source intelligence, is a core challenge we have in addressing this. So I believe that there should be trust building between the government agencies, especially the security agencies, and the media organizations, who often bring the evidence, these very illicit activities and that are causing serious insecurity in the country.
Thank you very much, Augustine. And finally, to Mr. Abiodun, some of the spillovers of this conflict typically is when you have people that used to farm before, they are no longer on their farms. Maybe it's now an old farm, or it's a semi-old farm, uncertainty around the farms. Then you have herders moving into these farms. And then you go from resource issues, and then it becomes ethnic issues, it becomes profiling issues. So what do you think about the dynamics of, how it spills over into things like this, and how can this be managed?
I'm very glad you brought that up. And as you spoke, all I could see was Plateau State. And I remember the first assessment that I carried out in Plateau State at the beginning of the conflict in Plateau State, going into farmlands that were also mine sites, that you could also, and one of the biggest struggles that they pointed out was, look, cows would fall into the pits in the farms, but the pits are mining pits. The herders get angry and attack the farmers. The farmers poison the water. A larger contingent of cows will drink this water, would die, and then sometimes conflicts will break out in the communities. That's inevitable. Why? Because also the human population in Plateau State has also grown in quantum leaps over the years. And so you are struggling for three basic resources. You're struggling for land, you're struggling for water, and you're struggling for space, for minerals within that space. Everyone wants a mining license. Everyone wants to mine as well. Farmers are mining in off-season of the farming season, and it's not just in Plateau State. You find a replay in Taraba State as well. As a matter of fact, the Benue Valley, because people think that there are no minerals in Benue State. You kid me. The same in Kaduna State, that these are going on in various communities across the country. And as I think about it, I also begin to think about Ebonyi State, the pollution of water that we've seen time and again, and the way in which companies like Crush Rock have deprived the communities. So the mineral, and not just the rocks, but also the water that we continue to contend for. I think that government policy goes a long way in dealing with this. And I said it at a meeting last week, and I'll say it again. Check this room and count how many government officials showed up. We sent nothing less than 20 invitations, at least that I can count easily off the tip of my fingers, to government institutions to be in this room. But for the past 3 meetings I've attended, I would say that I have seen NOA has been very consistent in attending meetings. I'm not going to lie about that. NOA has been very consistent in listening to civil society about what's going on. I saw some of them at the Climate Summit last week as well, and there was silently in the room people from the Ministry of Environment, from the Climate Department. Government needs to think about these issues. I particularly would like to call out the Ministry of Water Resources, who think that their position is a political token and not realize that this is the most essential mineral. After air in our country, the most essential mineral is water, and that we're losing it. I'd like for us to think about how all of this interplay. Josiah is coming to chase us away, but I'll finish what I'm saying. But how all of this interplay and create the crisis across the country. It's true, that's how Edosa will be sneaking up and down, like that headmaster. But I'd like for us to think about how that interplays. When he's bullying me at the office, none of you are there. This gentle face. let me plug this in because it's part of the national issues that we need to deal with. And the food insecurity that I suffer, global rights, it's all right. But I'd like us to think about all of this interplay, and that, look, I love to listen to Sheikh Lemo so much. And he said something very important last week as well. Dr. Inya, you were there. That, look, when people begin to put on the uniform of identity and hold on strongly to identity, there usually are deprivation issues underlining them that makes people look for identity with which to raise the issue. So the identity becomes ethnic, it becomes religion. We've been talking about the crisis in Plateau being a resource crisis for several years. It's only recently that they started to listen to us, that this is not an ethnic problem, this is not a religious problem, this is a resource problem. And government must deal with it as a resource problem. Government is also using ethnicity and religion, and let me use those two identities as a cop-out for their irresponsibility. So when there are mass killings in any part of the country, as long as we ascribe it to religion, and as long as we ascribe it to ethnicity, it will not be investigated, and it is automatically not just forgiven, automatically wrapped up in carpet and thrown into the pit, into the abyss of forgetfulness. And it's only growing a big mold across our country, and it's what has combusted and is now in our face. And so I'd like us to begin to think about how mineral resource, the Niger Delta, and my brother Ken spoke about that this morning, how that place is so totally combusted. See, all the crises we register in the Niger Delta has become so everyday that papers don't even report them anymore. It's been so accepted. But at the base of them all, at the base of the insurgencies, at the base of the so-called farmer-herder crisis, at the base of terror pillages, which Nigeria likes to call banditry, that's going on in our country, at the base of all of that is a resource war. But the greatest resource I'd like to fight for in the next iteration of work, if Oga Edosa will allow me, is water. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, that's very, very succinct and captures underlying issues that are easily missed again. And then it brings us to the point where media reportage is also important. When media needs to have adequate capacity, of course, to understand the technicalities and nuances of these issues. So when the headlines are coming out, it is the issue that is in the headline, rather than our profiles. Trying to keep to time. So let's play a game, 30 seconds game. In 30 seconds, as much as possible, try to give us a final word.
Defunding terror and protecting resource-rich communities requires a strategic, tactical, and inclusive approach. And all of us here needs to be involved. We need to begin to show concern about what is happening in these resource-rich communities. It's not about them, it is about us. So we really need to show presence and show commitment. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would say that in order for media not to also join those who are funding terror, media should provide balanced information. It looks to me like the headlines sometimes appear to be promoting the terror.
Right.
Because when you hear the headline saying that bandits have killed 140 people without details, or the details appear to be promoting banditry, then you are either encouraging more persons to join, or you are presenting the community helpless, and by that means you are also funding terror.
Thank you very much. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Well, I think that the government we should revisit as Nigerians the Constitution and the way in which we think about resources. I've spoken about how water should be labeled an essential, critical mineral. I'd also like for us to think about the way in which minerals are structured in the Constitution under exclusive reserve, under exclusive jurisdiction. I think that we need to involve the state governments. There's the Miremco at the Ministry of Mines and Steel Development that is non-functional, that they must become functional. State governments must have a say in how the minerals are used. The Ministry of Mines and Steel cannot be both regulator and administrator at the same time. And so, yes, we need to think about how these things are structured and how to protect mining host communities.
Thank you. Augustine?
Okay, from my own side.
Augustine,
Okay, what's it?
before we forget.
Oh, all right. Thank you. Thank you so
30
much.
seconds, please, Augustine.
All right. My own last word should be that it shouldn't only be voting or ballot papers that should get to the ends of Nigeria. Governance should get to everywhere. If we are able to delegitimize the governance of insurgency, and bandits in these communities, and legitimize governance of governments, right, where resources are provided, government meets the needs of the people, and government, there's a mechanism to have feedback, information, and response from the government to the communities. This will be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maladam.
Okay, from my own side, what I will say, as far as the government keep pampering the terrorists and their sponsors, we have a long way to go in this country. Therefore, it is a responsibility of the government to discharge its constitutional duties of protecting the lives and the properties of citizens. Anything short of that is unacceptable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, finally, to the audience, your name and one sentence. Yeah, your name and a sentence. Once you exceed a sentence, then we can't answer your question. And unfortunately, we have only 4 slots. 1, 2, I want new faces, voices we haven't had before. 1, 2, 3, 4. The man in, okay, yes. The 2 people over there, my gentleman in suit here, and then a young lady. Your name and one sentence.
I hope I
and
can
to
make
who
one
you are
sentence.
directing the question.
Okay, my question is to Madam Ahmed. My name is Swat Dunia. Listening to you, the level of complicity is very, very high. Whether on the side of government, and there seems to just be a collaboration to make things very impossible. Now, often here, when we talk about mineral resources, resource control is always, very high in the lexicon of part of problem solving. Do you think that can actually solve the problem in Zamfara State?
Did you get the question? And sorry, Swat, you've done Brila FM in Kaduna before, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I recognize the voice. Second person, your name and one sentence.
My name is Redzi Jugo, SIPJAD, Srayana Initiative for Peace, Justice and Development, from a famous Plateau state that is topping the charts. I need to state this very clearly. And I say this because we seem, and I like the definitions of resource, the way it is getting to water and to land, because as I speak here, both in Lagos, I'm presently involved in some conversations that in Lagos and in Plateau State, Land Use Act, sections you compulsorily acquire land. People are begging to either get even paid compensation or reacquire the lands that are ordinarily under the state, the laws. Now, we need to understand something. It is not as if the government does not know that we have more state within a state, like in Zamfara State. That I have sat down with people from his state, and I know that while all of this running around is going on, some people are enjoying. You won't believe that in some of those bushes, the ACs they have air conditionings. They are enjoying the life going on there. They know what is going on. The question is, if we keep quiet or we do not have conversations like this on a regular basis and apply the kind of pressure that needs to be applied for even the laws to be changed or policies to be adhered to, we would stagnate and will continue to retrogress. So kudos to everybody who is in this room. The job is ongoing and needs to keep going on.
Thank you very much. In white. No, those two.
Well, my name is Barrister Hafiz Wali from Kano, Rise of Youth Initiative. Mine is just a comment with regards to the issue of prosecuting bandits raised by my brother from Zamfara. I think In Nigeria, we are having a weak justice system. To be able to do that, we must review our justice system. Let me give you a particular example of myself and a particular magistrate. We are taken to a prison around 5 o'clock to conduct a proceedings for the release of about 30 inmates who are involved in free election violence under the order of Attorney General, who is receiving order, of course, from the governor. So if we are going to do that, the justice system in Nigeria is only working on peace-loving citizens. Once you are close to somebody or you are with somebody, there's no justice.
Thank you very much. In white, please, very, very brief and quick. We have had only one question, right? Yeah. Only, okay, so that means we can take it.
My honor is to shed more light on what Adam has already said. He said that in Birmingham government there are at least 10 wards that are not accessible to all. They are mainly occupied by bandits, under the control of bandits. Likewise in Jibel government, we have 11 wards, and nobody is accessible to what. You cannot walk out from local government metropolis a kilometer ahead without meeting a huge amount of, or I can say, huge number of bandits holding with, very, very big arms. A local government chairman cannot go anywhere. He cannot go there. People cannot go there. This head cannot even go there. So we are trying our best to recruit or to enlight more people so that they will be able to report any incident in time. We used to apply early warning, early response so that we'll be able to do more about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we've had only one question, so that means we'll take a question from this lady.
Yes.
Okay. Very quickly, please. Thank you.
I want to thank the panel for having enlightened us the more this afternoon. 2 emerging trends were observed by me, and I stakeholders
Thank you very much.
to look seriously at these angles.
Thank you very much for that contribution. Do we have more time? Huh?
Thank you.
2 more, right?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes. No, there's someone here that. Yeah, she's had her hand up for a long time. So let her speak, please, so I can hear new voices. Sorry. For gender inclusion. She's here. So we had only one question, right? Okay. Very quickly, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sakinatu Muhammad Bello, and I'm the program officer of Center and Advocacy Center for Development in Gombe State. Mine is kind of like a kind of comment based on what my brother from Zamfara said. That was the time I was going through my Instagram and I came across a podcast that was done by the governor of Zamfara State. And he was saying in Hausa that there is some things that is happening within his state that he doesn't have control over it. And one is whenever he gives a standing order within his own state, they receive another standing order here in Abuja. So his own standing order is like a kind of go down, you understand? So he said his hands are tied based on this issue. So when he was discussing the kind of issues that are happening in Zamfara State, it now came to like make a lot of sense regarding what he's saying. And the issue of mining and extracting industries, I would like to say something. For us, or for Nigeria to be effective, I feel there is an issue of exclusivity. And only if we're inclusive, that is involving women in political participation, I think that that system of vulnerability of women will come into pass. And the issue of education is one of the basic important things that we need, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, where we have a huge amount of population, and they are not educated. Thank God today, if we look at TikTok and what have you, everybody is a media himself. So even if the media do not give a good information regarding what is happening, like everybody is a media, you can get it across. So I think political participation is very key and important. Women need to be actively involved, both at the lower and the upper chambers, and also appointed positions. These are the only ways we can moderate or minimize the level of vulnerability in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then the final speaker, as fast as possible, if possible. She's up. No, she's up.
Good afternoon,
so the
everyone.
question is for you, right?
My name is Zainab Abdul Rashid. I work with the Women's Rights Advancement and Protection Alternative, RAPA. I would like to comment on the foregoing discussions. I think with all the recommendations that have been put forward, there needs to be a deliberate effort to ensure that these recommendations are implemented, because we have a lot of panel discussions day in, day out, year in, year out, and nothing happens. Same goes for the policies in place. We have a lot of robust policies that should have translated into useful action, and also the welfare of the populace that have been, largely affected in Nigeria up until today. So I think there should be a deliberate effort to ensure that the recommendations from this summit gets channeled to the right authorities for implementation, and also to ensure that we declare an emergency, on the review of the existing policies, on the Land Use Act, on the mining policies in place, to ensure that women and other marginalized groups as well have a say and also are included in the right to own the land and also participate in the mining processes and benefit from the proceedings. With the local government autonomy that is in place right now, I think a lot can be done leveraging on this new law that has been passed. And we need to use this channel to ensure that these recommendations get through to the local levels where these host communities are largely affected. And I think this is a great opportunity to achieve that, ensuring that after the summit tomorrow, hopefully immediately, we begin to work with the voices, to influence the change for the review of the policies in place and also to implement the robust policies we already have to ensure that everybody within the country benefits largely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. In response to the question raised by my sister, I want to call the attention of the people to understand that the problem in the Northwest region is not about resource control. It is a conflict that has a different dynamics. Unlike what is happening in the Niger Delta, where people are agitating for good roads, they are agitating for some certain percentage and other infrastructures, what our people are agitating or they are begging is to allow to survive. This is our land. Take the land. Take the mineral resources. Allowed us to live. But they were always being forcefully being displaced because their presence in such communities is like a threat to these mining companies. Therefore, they are not asking for anything. All that they are asking is to allow them to live. And they are, in most cases, they pay allegiances. They are willing to pay taxes. We are willing to work for you as laborers. Just let us live, even if it is under your leadership. It is not about resource control. It is about emancipation and another form of modern day slavery. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brian, for wonderfully answering that question. And I think this draws the curtain on our panel session. It has been a pleasure to moderate this, and thank you for a very engaging audience. Okay, we're supposed to take a picture.
We need to include Austin. We're preaching inclusion, so. Thank you. Please, let's give it up for the panel. Thank you so much, Ahmed Abdul Samad. Thank you as well to all the panelists, Dr. Kelechukwu, also to Adamu, to Augustine, to Mary, and of course to Abby. Thank you for your thoughts. Quite a lot of things have come out of our panel conversations today. And just as the last speaker said, the point is about all the recommendations being made, not just going to waste, but actually making a difference at the end of the day. Thank you all once again. So can we just stand up for a bit? We've been sitting for too long. Let's stand up. Stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up, stand up. Sorry about that. So you could just stretch it out a bit, right? Before we get into another brief conversation on ending Nigeria's internal displacement crisis. So can we spell coconut? We can, right? How do we spell coconut? N-U-T-C-O-C-O. Okay. All right, so let's spell coconut, right? Are we ready? We can do that. 1, 2, go. C-O-C-O-N-U-T. Okay, did we get that? All right, let's do that again. Let's do that again and do it a bit faster. 1, 2, go. C-O-C-O-N-U-T. Faster. so much. Please be seated. Right. So we're inviting someone to just come and speak to us briefly on ending Nigeria's internal displacement crisis. So I'm sure you've noticed that we've just moved the program around a bit. So we're going to have this and end with lunch, late lunch at that, which is good enough for everybody, right? So she has been in this space for a while now and decided to delve into some politics. That's why I called her a politician